house.
Well, we are now back at Newcastle University.
Is in the village is because that's where the road stopped then, the dirt road.
Is a volunteer in Africa, Savannah House.
Well, we are now back at Newcastle University. That was all of our pre-recorded content. So thank you everyone for participating with us today.
And now we have Alexa Mills here, senior editor at the New York Times. Hello, good afternoon, Alexa. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, and we will start off a little interview, and basically we wanted to talk to Alexa on how it's like being a journalist in such big publications. And so in your job, would you say that journalism as a media work, as a sphere, is rather male dominated?
Yes, so I've worked at the New York Times and I've freelanced at other newspapers like the Boston Globe and the Washington Post. And I even ran, as the editor-in-chief, a small local newspaper in Washington, D.C. called Washington City Paper, which is about the city as opposed to our federal government there. And I would say in all four spaces, I did feel that it was male-dominated. I think that that's changing. And I don't think all news spaces are male-dominated, but from my experience, that has been the case.
That's really interesting. What was it like to becoming a journalist in America, and what made you decide to be a journalist? I became a journalist. I decided to become a journalist. I was about 31 or 32 years old. So I had already had 10 years working and earning a salary. And not 10 years totally were earning a salary because I did go to graduate school in urban planning. But I was running a publication at a university about city planning. And it was a science-oriented university. So I was really sort of alone in this idea of producing content and worrying about sentence structure and worrying about the paragraphs. And when I had grown, I felt that I'd done the most I could in that job. I wanted to move to the next thing. And to me, the next thing was journalism, or having an editor who would help me improve, being with other peers who are writers and media producers. So I decided to make a switch. And what were the first steps you took in order to become a journalist?
Let's see. First, I tried to write for the Boston Globe. I was in Boston, that's my hometown, and it didn't go very well. I didn't get a yes. So I applied to a graduate program in the city at Northeastern University and started as a part-time student, and right away was able to figure out, okay, this is what an article is, this is the process. And then when I started pitching, I got yes. I got the answer of yes. And I freelanced ultimately for about 2.5 years before I could actually get a job.
It's really interesting. And as a female worker, as a woman working in some of the world's most famous newspapers, what's been like a significant highlight you can share with us today?
Of my career? Well, I mean, now I'm at the New York Times. It's a famous newspaper. It's a comparatively wealthy newspaper. I'm not going to say it has all the resources it needs, but compared to other places I've been, the resources are incredible. I would say I have two highlights. I've been at the Times for about 3 years, I think. I can't even recall. My main job at the Times is to run a program called the Editing Residency. It's a program for early career journalists who have decided that they want to be editors as opposed to reporters. They can apply to this program, and if they get in, we provide 2 years of training and mentoring on becoming an editor. And at the end of 2 years, they get support to find a placement in another newspaper or another outlet. So one main highlight of my career has been working with early career journalists who want to be editors, who are trying to make the best decisions they can to find their footing as editors in the field. Watching them, have major accomplishments, going from finding, finding grammar errors, which is a huge deal, to assigning a major story, and in some cases the reverse. I have others who they can assign a major story, but the path to catching every grammar error is actually the harder road. So every person's individual victories. And then as a journalist, one of my main research areas is murders, racial homicides in the US in the 1930s, 40s, and 50s. There are well over 1,000 such murders that are either unsolved or justice wasn't served. And I have done research on these cases, mostly for the Washington Post, but working at the Times, it's really amazing to work with some just incredible investigative editors and attorneys.
That's amazing. We just have one question from the public. So essentially, what is the minority representation in the New York Times newsroom?
What is minority representation? Well, I think it's a complicated question. There's two ways to look at it. What is the representation, and also what is the experience that those journalists are having? I think in representation, there's for example, if we're on Women's Day, there's a good representation of women in the newsroom. I think that the experience of women in the newsroom probably still has some progress. And then when you look into other groups that you want to, multiple different races, the LGBTQ community, the trans community, journalists with disabilities. These are all areas that I would say across the industry, including the Times, that there's a lot of work to be done, both for representation and also in terms of how that environment welcomes and supports people with all kinds of difference. Age is another, I forgot to say, and there's so many different ways to be a minority. And I think there's a lot of work to be done. I think the Times is big and they do a really great job. And in fact, in my job as the manager of this editing residency, I mean, it's a huge, a goal of bringing in underrepresented groups. So it's a stated goal that we work hard on in our public materials, in our recruitment. But all that work is being done for a reason, because it's not done. It's not done.
Thank you very much for your question. So is there, what else do you think needs to change in order to create a more inclusive space for journalists?
An inclusive space for journalists in the world? Oh gosh, I mean, journalists in the world have, especially in the United States, have taken a hit. I think with the idea of facts and truth have come under fire. I don't know. I think it's above my pay grade. I don't know. It's there's a lot to be done. There's a lot to be done. I think there's also been a melding of fact and opinion on the journalist side. I think a lot of readers maybe don't know if they're reading a fact or an opinion at times. So I think there's work journalists can do to focus on facts and objectivity. But the environment is challenging, no doubt. But to create an inclusive space for all journalists within the newsroom, I think it's just a lot of understanding that needs to be built about where any individual is coming from based on any aspect of their identity, and creating more space for discussion and needs. And, one thing that's changed at the Times is they have an excellent parental leave policy now. for anyone who has a child or adopts a child or welcomes a child in their life. Those changes were a long time coming. There's a lot of people who have suffered without having that advantage before having it. So you can just imagine the huge array of cultural shifts that would be necessary to truly make an inclusive workspace.
So today during the broadcast, we saw live reports of women in the culinary field and in various corporates. And so how do you feel about women taking control of these working spaces? And what do you see within the field of journalism as a journalist yourself?
I feel great about it. I think women should take control when they want to and when they're have the opportunity. But I'd also say that that every woman's choice. I mean, if you are a woman who feels you feel the misogyny around you, or you feel your womanhood and you don't like to be in a leadership role, then you shouldn't have to. I think we have to let people manage these environments the way that works the best for them. And you have to really honor what any individual person decides to do. And it may be different. Maybe for someone it's taking the leadership role, and maybe for someone it looks different. I think, I was the editor-in-chief of the newspaper. I had a staff of 10. And so publicly it looked like the newspaper was woman-led, but my publisher was a man and our owner was a man. So there was, I was female to the world, but anything in that role, I felt a heightened sense of the misogyny around me compared to where at the times, I'm low on the totem pole in a newsroom of thousands. And I don't feel it as intensely. I felt it more as a leader. So I think when we really talk about who's in charge, you have to talk about where's the capital, where's the money coming from, whose money is that, and how does that affect the space?
Wow, that was really interesting. What is one piece of advice you would give to an aspiring female journalist who might be experiencing misogyny?
I think I would say is to do what you can. Do your best, do what you can, and really understand what you need. If you're not getting what you need right now, I would say to set your bar high. At least know exactly what you want, and that'll enable you to try to get that situation. We have a newspaper in the U.S. that's fairly new. It's called the 19th News, and it's woman-run and majority women. And I don't know anything about being in that space, but I think about it. I don't know them. I haven't worked for them or interacted with them very much, but you think about maybe for some that's the space they need to be in. So I would say, you can get the space you want, but let yourself, allow yourself to understand that about yourself.
Right. So finally, as we're highlighting women change makers today, can you tell us what you feel would make a woman change maker within the society?
You're a change maker. I heard one of the street interviews, one of the women was saying that they admired Michelle Obama. Obviously, if you think of Michelle Obama, she's a woman change maker. She's a global spokesperson for women and for African American people and for children. She's an amazing person, but I think anybody can be a change maker. I think I've gotten, some people also said they're friends, and I think I've gotten some of the greatest inspiration from watching my friends' personal struggles and how they've become, how they've changed even their own narrative. I have one close friend, she's very advanced in her career. She's really, you could say she's a public change maker, but I also think of her battle overcoming cancer and redefining her womanhood after a serious, illness, and rewriting her own story and having to change the narrative of what she thought her life would be. So I take great inspiration, maybe more from friends who I see the
the other side of their struggle.
Yeah. All right. So I think we're nearing to an end. Thank you, Alexa. Thank you for sharing your experiences.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, and it definitely gives us greater insight into how it's like being a woman within the journalism space as budding journalists ourselves, all of us here within this newsroom. It's really, really exciting to hear. Yeah. And yeah.
Wow. Goodness me, it's been an exciting hour, hasn't it?
It has.
Especially for us. Thank you everyone for watching our newsroom live on Facebook Live. I am Grace.
And I am Varsha, and this is Alexa. And thank you to all of our reporters. And this is the last you hear from us.
Yeah. Happy International Women's Day.
Yeah.
And we'll pass you on to Coventry University.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.